some coverage of what's going on at on the January 6 hearings. Apparently, at the OAN's, I guess this is their high school channel. Honestly, this girl looks like a character from Stranger Things. Like, like she seems nice, but then of course, there's a flash where she's got like green goo coming from her eyes and ears, and she's going like that, and then 11 has to fly in and get a bloody nose and drive her back into a wall, and a big fight entails where nobody touches anybody. Yeah, they put an intern in charge while they all bugged off out of the country. Yeah, it just reeks of public access. Is that Austin? Is it San Antonio? Is it generic city? Welcome. I am your host from Genaria. That's Kara McKinney, apparently, from Tipping Point on OAN. And she's going to, the Tipping Point, January 6th committee ignores election fraud tactics. Look, they're not even dealing with it. She's carrying the Dinesh D'Souza, wood, and we'll see if it amounts to anything. I'm sure she has a guest on that will school us on this, but it was literally one of the only clips we could find that actually addresses January 6th. Everybody else on the right is like, there's men swimming with women. Like they're just anything. Or there's a squirrel that can water ski. Like it went Anchorman so fast. But let's see what their take is. Hi, Kara. By the way, it would be wrong of me not to point out that you're watching Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. Hello, welcome. I always forget to announce the show. I mean, there's 5 minutes of the title. You should get it by now or whatever. But since she brought up Tipping Point, there's a little jar right there. And if you give bits and super chats or you subscribe like there, it makes little things go in it. So it's Tipping Point. Oh, there's no audio on the clip. Hold on. It's Kara. Yeah, luckily I caught that early. Thank you. Hold on, we'll back up.
Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney.
Hi, Kara McKinney. It's Kara McKinney, everybody.
After a year and a half of control of the White House and both chambers of Congress, the Democrats have nothing to show for it but a string of
nothing to show for it except getting us out of Afghanistan, an infrastructure bill, 3.6% unemployment, and the greatest realignment of NATO since World War II.
National crises, the border, the price of gas, inflation, crime, and one's unimaginable fiascos, such as a baby formula shortage.
Yeah, we're already past that part. I mean,
so they've fallen back on their old standby.
Yes. Gun grabs. Trying to teach kids gay sex using pop-up books that are in libraries that have different covers on them. So a kid goes up and tries to get a Captain Underpants book and boing.
Morbid obsession with President Trump.
A morbid obsession with, well, I will say, if you're going to have if anybody has an obsession with President Trump right now, it's going to be fairly morbid. I mean, he looks kind of gross. You know what I mean? You're not going to fixate on him because he's the hot new thing. You know what I mean?
Hence the January 6th show trial in the House this week and last week.
It is a good show. I like it. I like where it's going. I feel, I'm a bit upset that they decided, like Stranger Things, in deference to you, Kara, that they're going to move the season finale, dual super episodes a couple of weeks, just teasing us. I can't take it. It's so exciting. Because the show was going so good, they got me locked in. I'm very excited. It's like, oh my God. And then I got to wait for the next episode. Don't they recognize on the January 6th committee, they should have had, instead of getting somebody from ABC to produce this thing, they should have gotten somebody from Netflix to produce it. Then they could have shot them all at once and just dumped them all online and we could all binge them. And by tomorrow, there'd be like maggots outside of Mar-a-Lago with torches going, you stole my money.
For them, persecuting a few MAGA hat wearers, though entertaining, is not good enough.
By the way, she may have footage we don't have, but at no point in any of the recreations or the interviews or certainly any of the testimony that these guys gave, did I ever see Eastman or Frank or any of these guys wearing MAGA hats.
They want the ultra MAGA king himself in irons.
No. I don't want him. I don't want him in irons. That goo that makes you unable to move. You know what I mean? Like it's like a non-lethal marshmallowy kind of thing that they were testing out for a while. That'd be funny. And by the way, the dude can barely walk already. I honestly think it'd be a waste of irons. What's he going to do? Run? Honest to God. Ever in your life, have you ever seen Trump do anything remotely close to running? I'm just saying, cuffs might be necessary, especially if there are women nearby, but you're not going to need irons, honestly.
Therefore, they have to gin up the idea that January 6th was somehow worse than Pearl Harbor and 9/11 put together.
No, that's hyperbolic on your part. The point is that these are extraordinary moments in American history that were violence that was directed at ending our system of government or upending it or replacing it with another one. So in that way, it's very similar. The only difference is that Pearl Harbor happened all the way across the country and way into the ocean and far, far away, and the Confederacy never managed to fly the Confederate flag inside the Capitol the way the MAGA rioters did.
And then pin it all on Trump and his claims of widespread election fraud. Hence bringing in a quarterling Bill Barr to mock Dinesh D'Souza.
A what? What's wrong with Bill Barr? What's he doing?
2,000 mules.
Hold on. Oh, mocking 2,000 mules. How dare he? Wait.
11 put together.
I don't know. I couldn't figure out what the word she was to describe him.
And then pin it all on Trump and his claims of widespread election fraud. Hence bringing in a quarterling Bill Barr.
A quarterling Bill Barr? A quarterling? I don't know.
To mock Dinesh D'Souza's 2,000 Mules movie.
Yeah, they didn't bring him in for that. That was just extra. That was gravy.
And say you see no evidence of anything presented in that film.
By the way, nothing, I don't know if she knows this, but because we have freedom of speech in this country, nothing Bill Barr says, especially as a private citizen who's no longer the AG. By the way, and when he was the AG, he was put there by Donald Trump. Nothing he says will stop you from wasting your fucking money and watching that piece of shit. Or, tuning in to my takedown of it, which is somewhere in the videos on my channel. Look around. And you can watch the whole thing. Broke it all down. Sentence by sentence, moment by moment, garbage by garbage, shit by shit. And Dinesh D'Souza, still a coward.
But our next guest in a couple of recent pieces for The Federalist says,
ooh, Reese's Pieces. That sounds delicious. That's not what you said.
The committee is completely ignoring verified evidence that election laws were broken.
Oh, election laws were broken. Oh, you mean the ones that were suspended technically because we were in a national emergency and a state emergency, and that gave flexibility to both the electoral boards and the governor and secretaries of state to make sure that the election could go on even though there was a pandemic going on, and that the laws that were allowed to be more flexible in those circumstances would be the same if there was a hurricane or an earthquake or some shit like that. Or you're like, look, if there's an earthquake where you live, you don't deserve to vote. So anybody in Austin who's getting some of those new fracking earthquakes, enjoy. If any of those happen around the time that you're having an election and you're like, a gas main breaks and it blows up a few houses, God forbid, and there's a bit damage around, I'm sorry, but if, let's say, the road is blown out, unless the legislature of Texas can come back together, and considering even your senators fuck off when there's a problem, that might be hard. If they can't get together, pass a bill and realign, allow the people in the area that's cut off by the fracking gas explosion to be able to mail in their votes or send them some other way, or have someone deliver them, while walking across the rickety ladder across the crevice that's been created in the earth until, I guess, Superman can fly in and patch it and get Lois Lane's car out, which we all hope for. Until that time, you just can't vote. You're not allowed. You can't vote.
In many places, Georgia, she quips, provides a peach of an example.
A peach of an example. My stars.
State law there stipulates that people who move from one county to another more than 30 days before an election must vote in their new counties. But
yeah. So obviously you lose your citizenship.
Analysis shows.
So it's great. In Georgia, I'm sure Raffensperger and Kemp know this, all you have to do is go to areas where there's a group of people aren't going to vote your way, and I don't know, crack a dam or flood the water system with lead, or have somebody drive a truck full of uranium downtown and park it and contaminate the area, and then everybody's got to move. 26 days before the election, they're not going to have time to redo their registration. They're not going to be able to do it. So you can get rid of those votes, lickety split. She does talk out of the side of her mouth. It is a little telling.
Shows that nearly 35,000 Georgia voters voted in their old counties.
Yeah, for Trump, though, for the record, these were all Trump voters. I'm just saying that every situation where anybody voted illegally and it can be proven that they voted illegally, just to clarify, 100% Trump voters. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And not only were they Trump voters, but they were actually paid Trump voters. These are Trump mules, every single one of them. And I'm sure there's footage, but I don't need to show it to you. You just need to believe me. And there's no questioning it. What are you going to do? Like, do you not care about America? I mean, honestly, yeah. So at no point did any of all 30,000 plus of those people, they all voted for Trump. And so I think their votes should be thrown out. We're in total agreement, Kara.
And those votes were included in the official vote count, which President Trump lost by less than 12,000.
Yeah, he should have lost, but thanks for bringing it up, Kara. He should have lost by about 42,000. And I think that's important. I think it's very important that we recognize that none of those votes should be counted. And Trump, they're just going to all have to come out of, I think that the new tradition, the losers count, so that America can move on,
So joining us now to discuss all of this, which she writes about in this recent piece for The Federalist, is their...
Not The Federalist, the same people who brought us the story about the socialist ammo not being sold anymore on the open market because the government's not going to overspend 30% on bullets from one particular factory in Missouri, and therefore it's an end run around the Second Amendment. You mean those guys at the Federalists? You mean the same Federalist folks that send Trump his list of judges that gave us, gun-toting New Yorkers and a woman's... But you could take your concealed carry permit state to state without being molested by anybody. But if a woman wants the right to choose, she's got to choose a state that lets her first. Okay.
Senior legal correspondent Margot Cleveland, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
No, we're glad you're here. And you don't look at all like a woman who would answer the door at a haunted house.
Great. So in your article, you note that as of this time last year, I believe it was around July actually,
someone came and stole your lights.
Georgia's Secretary of State's office confirmed to The Federalist that an investigation into those residents who switched counties was still ongoing. But what has happened since then? I know you're...
Yeah, what happened to those Trump voters who all voted illegally for Trump?
What?
I mean, shouldn't we lock them all up? I mean, I think they all moved to the villages right afterwards. I would just raid the villages. I think that in Florida.
Your follow-up with them for this new piece went unanswered. Do we know any updates?
It's weird that you're telling me that they're still not answering your phone calls about bullshit that was settled a year ago. It's almost like they've got better shit to do or new elections coming up.
We don't. As you said, my last piece in discussing it, I sent an email to Secretary of State and a couple of his top people and never got a response.
Huh. That's weird, Margot. I mean, you're the senior legal correspondent for The Federalist, and you're telling me they didn't get back to you? I mean, they didn't even send you a link to where this had already been asked and answered like half a dozen times last year?
So we don't know what the status of that investigation is. And
yeah, it found nothing and they moved on.
Obviously, this is not going to change what happened in 2020.
No, clearly not. Because it would just mean Trump lost by more, sure.
President Biden is our president. Everyone is painfully aware that he's our president.
Apparently not. And by the way, I'm surprised they haven't pulled your mic already.
But what we're missing here, and I think this is missing on both sides of the
Yeah. I mean, it is a both siderism kind of thing.
aisle, is that the problems in 2020 were systematic.
Systemic. I mean, Of all the overused words in our current political discourse, you can't get that one right?
They were widespread.
No, they weren't. Well, I would argue here's how you can say widespread voter fraud with a straight face. There was like one case every 9 counties across the entire country of varying impact. The majority of them, of course, being Trump voters. But every single one that's been prosecuted, they're widespread because there's a lot of distance between them. You know what I mean? It's like that explanation of all the atoms in an orange. If you blew it up to the size of the earth, they'd be the size of cherries. And if you blew those up to the size of the earth, the distance between the nucleus and the nearest proton would be from here to the moon or something, the sun, actually.
And they are the reasons that people do not have faith in the outcome of the elections.
No. The reason they don't have look at her smirk. No, the reason they don't have faith in the outcome of the elections is because they are lunatic Trump supporters and they buy all of his bullshit hook, line, and sinker, and it's keeping them from voting and depressing the vote. And it's increasingly looking like the Republicans are going to shit the bed in a bunch of crucial areas, even when it's their race to lose, apparently, because Trump and people like you continue to push this bullshit.
But I'd also couple that with the other reason people don't have faith in the outcome of the elections is what Hillary Clinton did.
Yep. Does anybody know what year it is? Who? Hillary. Bitch, that was 6 years ago. This woman has not held office for 8 years. What are you talking about? Hillary? Please say Duff and that there was some sort of an affair going on. What? What'd she do? Was it because she sat for 11 hours during the Benghazi hearings? Was it because she beat him in the popular vote and you still haven't gotten over it? What? It's Hillary's fault. Jesus Christ. These are the same people who think that Biden pointing out that there's less oil on the market because of Russia is him blaming Putin and not taking responsibility. And this idiot is bringing up Hillary to reference the 2020. What? What is happening? What? All right. You know what? I take it back. I like it.
And that was
What did she do?
This is where I was hitting several points this week.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So let me get this straight. You wrote an article about bullshit election fraud charges in Georgia, asked and answered, that they are no longer investigating because they looked and they were like, oh, that's fucking, there was no investigation. We looked at the list. It's done. We're not talking to you assholes anymore. It's a waste of time. And you sent them, what'd you do? I'm doing an article about how there's 36,000 dead people that voted, or by moving counties. They were all buried in the wrong county. And how Hillary Clinton, hello?
Hillary Clinton put together this crazy Spidey scenario. It's outrageous to
Spidey scenario? I'm just saying, if she had Spidey senses, maybe she could have seen more trouble coming and she would have released the Steele dossier instead of punting it.
think what happened. But
what happened? It happened. What happened? What happened? Get the fuck out of here.
We know it did.
What? You know what did?
That they had a former British spy who was paid by Clinton.
No, he was paid by Fusion GPS, which was hired by the Washington Free Beacon, a right-wing newspaper in DC, to dig up dirt on Donald Trump, because at that time they were supporting the person they thought was going to win, Jeb, and they thought that Trump would be a spoiler that would fuck up the whole thing. So they went to dig up some dirt on him. When they brought it back, by the time he had gathered it together, Trump was ahead in the polls, and they went, fuck it, we'll back the winner. We don't care. It's not like we actually have ethics or morals. And so he went over to the Clinton campaign and went, take a look at this shit. I've really found this out. This is true. These are people I trust. Like national security, like nuclear secret level shit was like, we averted worldwide disasters, the people that are giving me this information, a couple of times. So I trust these folks. And this is what they're telling me. And the Clinton campaign went, he goes, you have to pay for the rest of it to see it. And he's like, okay. So they paid for it. And they're like, we can't show this. It's PP tape shit. We're going to beat him anyways. And so he and others around Hillary Clinton's campaign went, are you fucking kidding? Somebody needs to go to the authorities. So one of the attorneys that worked at her firm, who was working for somebody else, went to the FBI and went, you guys got to look at this shit. Like, she's not going to bring it up. This is fucked up. Trump is a crook. This is dangerous. He's bought and paid for. He's owned. This is scary shit.
Feeding stuff to the FBI.
They weren't feeding stuff. And that's the Sussman thing, which was already, this was already punted. Really? She's rewriting Durham.
Been spied on the Trump campaign via the FISA warrants.
Okay. If I may. First of all, fuck Carter Page and his bullshit. We all know that one of the reasons why there wasn't email evidence or text messaging evidence that they could use against Carter Page is because nobody's stupid enough to email Carter Page. You gave him a piece of paper. You gave him a plane ticket to Russia. He went there. He gave a speech. He handed an envelope to somebody. He got an envelope back from them and he walked it over. That's how Trump operates, how he's operated for a long fucking time. None of this is a surprise anyway. In the Mueller report, there was like, here's all these culpabilities. This is all this sketchy shit, but we can't indict him because we don't have permission. And you didn't let us look at the primary one, which is reason for all this, which is the motivation of financial gain, which is you wouldn't even let us look at his books.
And we know this happened.
We know it happened.
So that's why people believe.
That's why people, because Hillary Clinton, what to do? Who's the 13-year-old on the left? It's like we're watching like a crazy woman indoctrinate her daughter into like, look, David Koresh is God's messenger, and you need him to carry. You have to be the carrier of Jesus' way in your womb.
Believe some of the crazy stuff about the election fraud.
No, they believe it because they're gullible enough to think that Donald Trump wrote Art of the Deal and actually acted on any of the principles in it. That he was a successful businessman. That the fucking Celebrity Apprentice makes him a good businessman the way the host of Survivor is Bear Grylls. Get fucked.
But if you even take that to the side, we have lots of very mundane election issues.
Yeah, very boring. Yeah, definitely bad. Definitely boring. Definitely boring.
We had the drop boxes that
were legal.
Were illegal.
No, they were legal.
In Pennsylvania under the Pennsylvania Constitution.
That's not true because the Emergency Powers Act gives the governor and the Board of Elections the ability to do things like that to make up for the fact that a lot of people couldn't vote in person because there was no vaccine yet and there was a pandemic going on. Like, this is just silly. Not true. 100% garbage, bullshit, silliness, idiocy, embarrassing. Don't know why they keep doing this. They all know this, or they're just not looking. It was literally Trump declared national emergency, and then all the states declared, state emergencies in correspondence with the federal government. They all, do you know the broad powers that not only the president, but that the governors have in the, that's where if there's an emergency, that's when they can declare martial law. Like, there's a lot of shit they can do that doesn't require them to call everybody together and have a straw vote.
We had problems in Wisconsin.
Well, I mean, that much cheese is going to clog up anybody, babe.
Where the state basically said,
I don't know why I turned into Dennis Miller all of a sudden. Babe.
Oh, just because of COVID, you can vote by mail.
Yeah, that's just because of COVID. Just because there's a contagion going around that we don't have a vaccine for that's killing hundreds of thousands of Americans, literally spiking as we get into the election. But just because of that, you don't have to go stand in line for 4 hours and cough on everybody's shoulder. What the?
There were so many widespread problems.
No. Again, notice how the widespread problem, like, let's take teeny problems that don't even fucking chart. And because they're spaced evenly or really far apart, that's widespread. The beaches in America are widespread. Coasts. American coasts. Coastal property in America is a widespread problem. spread between two coasts.
And then you also had the things that were designed to prevent fraud, such as signature verification.
Yeah, that was because you couldn't have a stranger in a pandemic who wasn't vaccinated come into somebody's house and like force an individual to accept a stranger into their house that might be carrying a contagious disease, or put the state at liable because some asshole who doesn't, there had to be a Democrat and a Republican, each one there, and the Republicans don't believe in it, so they won't wear a mask, so they're barging into everybody's house and coughing on everybody's grandmother, and then the state gets sued out of existence. They compared the signatures, and then they canvassed and recounted. If there was mass numbers of people like, that's not my signature, there's not a single fucking person that these assholes have ever found who was like, I didn't vote, and I sure as shit didn't sign the thing. Jesus.
We had those completely ignored.
Yeah, I also, and to be fair, ma'am, I also ignore Bigfoot stories. Not because I don't find them fascinating. It's just because I'm not in Yellowstone or in northern parts of Canada where I might run into one. So it just doesn't chart. Yes. And by the way, Bigfoot also a widespread problem, I would like to say. Just, by different names, Sasquatch, Yeti, Bigfoot, talk about him in the Appalachians, talk about him in the Rocky Mountains, some of this shit up in Alaska, some of this shit up in Saskatchewan, that's what I call it. And Saskatchewan. Sorry, Canada, you're now called Saskatchewan, because it's all 100% Sasquatches up there. Yeah, Northern California, they're spread out all over the place. It's a widespread problem. They're literally UFO sightings are less of a widespread thing because they're closer together.
The single thing that I'm talking about was a problem that Jimmy Carter in 2005.
Oh yeah, I remember him. I love him. He's a good man. He was also president before people had home computers. You know what didn't exist when Jimmy Carter was president? Cell phones, QR codes, UPC symbols, laser scanners at the grocery store, apps that could track the arrival of your ballot application and the receipt of your ballot itself. What else? Electric cars being readily available that you could run your house off of.
Said was a problem, and instead,
yeah, again. Also, for the record, Jimmy Carter once saw a UFO. So technically, this ties into the widespread problem part of it. Also, I would like to say, for the record, that if you go further back than Jimmy Carter, the Pony Express and the way that electoral ballots were, votes were taken to the White House, right, or to the Capitol for counting, it was the U.S. Postal Service, which was just, it could be attacked by engines and marauders and cowpokes, which sounds like you're not actually taking the cow for any commercial reasons.
What we're having, the January 6th committee.
Yes, look at all these evil people. Look at them. She's just running ballot after ballot after ballot. She doesn't care. They just run them again and again. Look, they're red right there. This is where all the envelope where all the Trump votes go. And then they go into the shredder.
Trying to make it like the handful of people who use violence, which is obviously outrageous.
I don't know anyone with hands big enough to hold 1,000 people, 800 of whom have been charged. It's not a handful, asshole.
Are the real problem.
Handful of bear spray, handful of Blue Lives Matter flags with the tip of the flagpole sharpened to a spear, and of course able to be, yeah.
And it isn't. The reason we can't trust our elections
is because Donald Trump has told you to, and you do whatever he tells you to do.
It's because our system is a mess in the United States.
No, it isn't. No, it's that's like what's a good analogy? It's like a drunk driver saying, "I can't trust the roads." Right when you think they're straight, they start weaving all over the place.
And all those points that you laid out about the system and how
Yeah, the points of the system, the points.
many ways
How about the points on those flagpoles? Doink, doink.
that it's broken, none of that got litigated through court. Is that correct? Because you hear all the time from, many people saying, oh, election fraud, rigging, however you want to call it, all that got debunked by the courts. The court said it was all a bunch of hogwash,
Yeah, no, here's the thing. During the evidentiary hearings, they either received none or Giuliani and his ilk, and probably folks that ran in circles with this young lady, they were all saying, I'll show you the evidence after you give us the court date. Yeah, and you get special arrangements because why?
just move on.
You don't understand. I work for the president, and I once played with my penis under my pants in front of a woman I thought to be 15 years old.
20 was the most
Not me, I mean, Rudy Giuliani. It's a Borat reference. Yikes. No one clipped that.
secure election in presidential history. But a lot of these issues you're talking about, that's not something that found their way into the courtroom, is it?
Not the courtroom. No, they were addressed by a judge.
So first off, I want to distinguish between some of the fraud and the violation of election laws, because there were some outrageous claims of fraud, such
crazy.
as the Dominican voting.
The Dominican voting machines, not the Dominion. That's the one who's suing OAN and all these other channels. The Dominican ones is where your votes went into a machine that went into a bong that was smoked by a Rastafarian and then bounced off of a hand-woven satellite and went to the Dominican Republic. And then the Dominican. Oh, shit.
Machines flipping votes. And there's no evidence.
The Dominican machines flipping votes.
That happened. But the other claims, like you mentioned, the Georgia, that never got litigated. And the reason was the court didn't put it on the docket until after the election was certified. Then you have Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's weird that they looked at it and were like, yeah, this doesn't chart. And they're like, but we'll bring you evidence. Well, knock yourself out. Turns out we don't have any. All right, and then it gets dismissed.
Wisconsin, which after the fact said.
Yeah, it's weird that they only, courts only allow you to have trials or civil trials about things that have already happened.
This was illegal. Wisconsin, another case there that went through, or I shouldn't say a case, but an investigation was about nursing homes and how the state had said you don't need to use these special deputies. And the investigation there actually turned up through the special counsel in the state that there was widespread fraud in the nursing homes. So
yeah, well, of course, all of them Trump votes, by the way. Just saying for the record, it is Wisconsin after all. It is we're talking about Paul Ryan's district. We're talking about Republicans controlling large sections of it. So they were obviously shuffling more Trump votes because he was worried he was going to lose Wisconsin and he needed to hang on to it. And it was looking increasingly like he was going to lose it. And therefore, he arranged through some of his surrogates to puff up the popular vote in a bunch of other states when he thought he might actually win. And then he actually needed him.
But it wasn't just the violations. So you're right. That's just.
No, it wasn't just the violations.
Just a talking point.
Also not true. There's like one woman who's like, she's supposedly voted, and look at her. She's in a persistent vegetative state. And you're like, do you have proof that she voted? She said she did. I thought she couldn't talk. Well, I know what she means. Well, then maybe she wanted to vote. She didn't want to vote. Listen to her. Hear that? That's her saying she doesn't want to vote.
Point that all this has all been litigated, move on. And the answer to that is very simple. No one is going to be able to trust an election in the United States unless these problems are fixed.
Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Republican side of the Jimmy Dore argument. Yes, depress the vote, the constant and never-ending attacks on democracy. I mean, you just couldn't do Putin's work for him with any more efficiency and clarity and with a better American Midwestern accent. That's what this lady and Donald Trump are all about. They are the Jimmy Dores of the right wing. Their whole purpose is to diminish the vote on their side of the aisle. That's the purpose. That's all they're there for. There is no other meaning to them. They're not going to change a fucking thing. They are just there to depress the vote. And as much as I don't like the ideas of Republicans voting, especially the Trump-friendly ones, I think this is a shame and a sham. It's a shame and a sham.
Jimmy Carter said that in 2005. It's not me saying it. It was
Right.
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, in 2005, talking about systems before we had the Dominion machines and the ES&S machines, by the way, print a receipt. At that time, they did not. And then the mail-in votes, there was no other than the regular signature and just paper. There was no way to guarantee that the same piece of paper was coming back to you. So you know what they did? They put a UPC symbol across the bottom. So each ballot is unique. So you can't just photocopy the same fucking ballot and run it again and again and again and again, because the machines will only see it as one ballot. Run a bunch of times. And it won't count but once. That was one of the fixes that happened after 2005. These motherfuckers with their... Christ. Oh, yes. TYT's same bullshit. That's, I mean, they depressed the vote until like 3 weeks, ahead of the election. And they're like, on second thought. And then they wonder why their audience hates them or considers them hypocritical.
And a commission that said that in 2005.
In 2005, it is 2022. A lot has happened since 2005. Ma'am, do you still have your same iPhone from 2005? Do you still have how I know you probably have an iPad from 2005. How do you still have a cable for it? You still use those big jacked up fuckers?
So if you want people to trust the elections,
don't let Hispanic looking men write on paper in full view of people that look like me. I'm not.
We need to fix our system.
It's a blue pen. If you write with it, it only votes for Dems. The pen is blue. The pen is blue. The goddamn pen is blue.
Now.
That we do. Last night we had on Dinesh D'Souza actually.
Really? Somebody has to, I suppose.
To respond to some of the claims we heard from the former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr, but I also know you have your own piece out, and you...
Oh my God. Please don't tell me that Dinesh had his piece out.
Say that actually both Republicans and Democrats get things wrong about Bill Barr. So I'd like to hear your side of this story.
Yeah, I mean, most of us think he was the dad on the old Dinosaurs sitcom, but I think that's out. I think that's unverified.
As well to, I guess, make things fair and to hear out the different arguments that can be made.
Uh-huh.
Sure. So just to be clear, I have not seen 2,000 Mules.
Well, if there's a lot of things to not see, and that's one of them.
I do not know how solid the evidence is or isn't.
I do. Psst. I mean, I'll watch this video, ma'am, and then watch what I did to that, and then, I mean, it might be a turning point in your life, a tipping point, if you will.
But the thing that Bill Barr did when he was discussing that
was laugh, which is the appropriate response.
Was he said, but what you're missing here is they're not going to throw the election out because of that. So, yes, he was flippant on the point. But frankly, why wouldn't he be? Because he heard a bunch of other crazy things that he had disproven. So he was very flippant on it.
Yes, he put it in the bullshit file because everyone he sent to look at it and everyone in the president's legal team who he had spoken to, including Pat Cipollone and all these assholes, had other people, and people in the DOJ went and looked at it and they went, yeah, this is horse shit. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. We can see these numbers. We know exactly what's coming in. This isn't, and we've solved most of the mystery things from previous electronic voting because of the hearings we had.
But the next sentence that he said was, the courts aren't going to throw it out because of that. And that's the key point.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't throw an election out because of rando bullshit accusations with no foundation, no evidence, who just file court cases and then never show up to actually fight them, when are we ever going to? We're not. Ask Al Gore.
Nothing Barr could have done would have changed what happened. It took years.
Yes, that's true. He was talking frankly with the president apparently all during 2020, and Trump wasn't listening because he's Trump.
Afterwards to put this together, which again goes back to my point. You can't have an election challenge.
You can't.
Where it is close and you have this many errors in the months after the election.
It's also not close. 2000, close. That was close. This wasn't close. These were thousands of votes in every place. That's why the made up numbers that they keep throwing have to be so egregious and so far outside the realm of reality. And that's what really wrecks their scheme. They were trying to squeeze it. That's the whole point. That's what Jimmy Dore and all those guys are trying to do. You got to keep the margin narrow to give those Republicans a chance to make it through. That's what helps. Because, nothing will bring about true progressive change like the country devolving into itself and the Republicans gaining control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency and sunsetting every law in the country every 5 years, including Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and they just, like the SCOTUS that Trump installed, like fuzzied up Miranda even today.
It's just not going to be enough time.
Not Miranda Coolidge from Jiminy Glick and La La Wood, the Miranda rights thing. Okay.
So Bill Barr was flippant about the movie
because it's an easy target.
But his point was, I couldn't have done anything. It's not going to throw out the election because of that. So I think that.
No. He didn't see 2,000 Mules back then with the other shit. He said he hasn't seen anything since. The stuff they were showing him at the time wasn't convincing. The stuff that she was bringing, these investigations, all the other stuff at the time, all the way leading up to January 6th, all the way up to the 20th, even the shit that happened for maybe a month after the election or the inauguration, that stuff wasn't convincing. And he was like, I haven't seen anything during that time or since, including 2,000 Mules, that would make me change my mind because it's fucking ridiculous.
That's kind of the key takeaway.
No, the key takeaway is it was a punchline. It didn't even chart with the other bullshit that, even if it was timely, wouldn't have changed anything.
What you need to do is that you need to make sure that the fraud doesn't happen. You need to make sure the prophylactic measures are.
Boing, 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 boing. Quit it. We're not putting condoms on voting machines. It's just gross. Because someone, especially if they're lubed, someone will slip. And yeah. Elections in America, ribbed for your pleasure.
In place. So it doesn't happen.
What happened to your grandmother? She was trying to vote and she pushed the button and the lube made her slide off and she collapsed into a pile of Chinese ballots. Now she's pregnant with a baby panda.
And we need to stop having this infighting on the right.
No, I don't think you do. I think it's healthy.
Because the real problem is the election integrity issue.
And I know you cover this very extensively and very meticulously at The Federalist, so I encourage viewers to go and read your articles on the issue. Margot.
Sounds fascinating. I'm going to get right on that. I'm going to get back to you on that. I'm going to miss him.
So thanks for taking time to drop by tonight.
Yeah, because we know you were busy at the Cauldron, apparently. Also, next time, could you at the very least hang a picture of a fake American skyline behind you? Because it looks like you're coming to us from the inside of a buttermint that's in a dish in American Horror Story. This is the closest thing I could find to somebody talking about the January 6th committee hearings on the right, because everybody else seems to be, avoiding it entirely.